Hello and welcome. My name is Frank Fischer, and in this video I would like to show you how to set up DeepCode as a Docker container in your own on-premise environment in conjunction, working together with a BitBucket server that is also installed on the same Docker host. And to do so, I have two machines. So I have this Windows machine here, and I have a Linux server in the backend that I will use to install all of the Docker components on it. And as you can see, we have an Ubuntu version 18.04.3. It's the LTS version. We actually have a pretty small machine here. So let me show you by starting this command. You can see it's an Intel Core i7 machine, so nothing super fancy in that regard. And also, maybe to show you some more of the hardware stuff, let's start this command. What you can see here is, well, that's the motherboard. It has 12 gigs of RAM, so 8 gig here, 4 gig there, and it has a 1 terabyte hard drive. That's literally what is it. It's not a super fancy machine, but for our environment here, that is actually enough. There's not much more than we need. What I have installed on this machine is Docker, obviously. I prepared that. I have also a little script here on the side that I can provide you so that you know the steps exactly that I do. What did I prepare so far? Okay, we have this Linux machine here. We have Ubuntu installed on it. I assigned several IP addresses to this machine. So I have the 5 to the 9 assigned. So as you can see, it's a private network. It's 192.168.0 network, and 5 to 9 is assigned to my Ubuntu Docker host. I use the IP address number 5 to communicate with the host. So this secure shell here is using this 5 to communicate with this machine. I will use the IP address 6 for BitBucket, and I will use the IP address 7 for DeepCode. The idea here is to simply keep it separated so that it's easier to follow and you can understand where I am. You can actually, by using port redirection, you can use one IP address and then overlay all of this. But I think for now that is easier to follow. So I used the separation here. Another thing that I did was I installed Docker using Snap. Reason is I made some good experiences with Snap. It simply configures it nicely. So I do sudo apt install snapd and then sudo snap docker, and there you have Docker installed on it. And last but not least, I also added a group called Docker, so sudo group add Docker. I added my user to this Docker group with this command, sudo usermod -ag docker $user. And then, because I'm a lazy guy, I simply rebooted the machine. With this, the Docker agent or the Docker server is restarted, and when it starts up, it literally looks out if there is a Docker group, and if so, it accepts the users within the Docker group to interact with the Docker command without using sudo. So you don't have to do this. This is simply me saving typing, so I don't have to do sudo docker all the time. But you could literally leave this out and simply use sudo in front of all of the commands. Good. So I think now everything is prepared, and we can start installing the different elements. It's literally 6 steps that we have in front of us, and then we are done. So without further ado, let's get on it. First, let us install BitBucket on our Docker host. To do so, we need to generate first a volume. That is this one here. So Docker volume create --name BitBucket volume. We are just firing this command, and you see it's successfully created that volume. Next is Docker run -v, so our volume, BitBucket volume that we just created. We map it to this path within the container. We give the container a name, --name equals BitBucket. We detach it, so we get our console back. We publish two ports, ports 7990 and 7999. These ports are published to the external network. And last but not least, Atlassian/BitBucket Server. This is the container image that we are about to download and to start. So we're using this command and we're starting it up. After the download has been done, the different layers have been merged into the final container layout, and the container is started. What I will do is I will start a web browser, and I will navigate to port 7990. And there I can see how the container starts up, sets up its environment, and all of these things. So as soon as this comes back, we should be able, like now, we should be able to start a browser. You see the IP address 192, 168, 0, and the 6 we should use, obviously. And then the port 7990. As soon as I start this, you see there's the Atlassian BitBucket server, and it's telling us that it's starting up. It's telling us what it's currently doing, connecting with the database, updating the schema, and all of these things. On my machine, it roughly takes like 2 minutes. I don't want to make you wait for this, so I will speed up the video a bit and come back as soon as this is done. So as we can see, BitBucket setup is completed, and we now can configure it. I leave English United States, database internal is okay. We will not set up an external database for this because it's just a demo environment. So I click next. It sets up the database, and what it's doing now is it gives us a server ID. And what you need to do with the BitBucket server is you need to activate this server by having a license key that matches the server ID. So I'm copying the server ID, and now we need to go to this website from Atlassian. So maybe I copy this website, navigate there, and then I need to copy this thing again. And here you can see on this website, my.atlassian.com/license/evaluation. I'm already logged in here, and you can see there's a drop-down field that offers you to select the product. So we want to have BitBucket. So I select BitBucket here. I want to have the BitBucket server. So we select the BitBucket server. My organization is DeepCode. My instance is already up and running. What is the server ID? And here comes the server ID that I just copied from this page here. So this server ID goes in here. And now I'm asking for generate a license. Normally this is pretty fast, and you see here's the license coming back. We have this license key here that we now kind of copy again into the copy and paste mechanism and the clipboard, I wanted to say. And here we can now go back to our local BitBucket server and say, I have a BitBucket license key. I just copy it in here and say next. It imports the license key, and this is done. Okay, so now username, we are setting a username root, calling it root. The email address is root@local.local. My password, and my password again. I say go to BitBucket, and there we are. We should be able now to log in with our password and keep me logged in. So we installed BitBucket successfully locally. So we have BitBucket started now, and it's time to configure it. So to do so, we need to set up an application link for DeepCode, and this needs to have public key infrastructure set up. So we need to have a public key for that. To do so, we can use these two commands here, OpenSSL and the other OpenSSL command. So I'm copying them, going to my server, and you see in my server I have a directory called srv for server, and then /DeepCode, and this directory as of now is pretty empty. There's the bb.environment file that we will need later, but as of now there's not a lot more to see. So what we do now is we're starting these two OpenSSL commands, and now we have the PEM and the pub file. We need the content of the pub file, so let's have this being displayed right away, because this is our public key now that we will use to communicate between DeepCode and BitBucket. So I'm copying and I'm pasting it here in my text file, so I know where it is and I nicely have it sorted out. Okay, so this is my public key. So next, let's go back to BitBucket and set the application link. So we are starting BitBucket. Here's the welcome screen. We go on this symbol here for the administration. And down here in the settings, you can see application links. So we start application links, and the future server that we want to set up will be on this address. So it will have the 7 at the end, and we will also make sure that it is port 80, so we don't need to give a port. So we say create a new link. What BitBucket now tries is to contact that server. Obviously that does not succeed because there is no server as of yet, so this is kind of expected, and we say continue. So here we need to fill in the application name. We call it DeepCode. We need to make sure that it's a generic application type here, and all of the rest is not of major importance for us for now. So we say continue, and the configuration link was created. Now we need to register our public key with this generic application. So we go on this symbol here, this pencil symbol. And in here you can see there is the incoming authentication. And let me show you on the script here. So in the incoming application, this is here, we use our consumer key and we set these fields. Okay, so we have the incoming authentication. We are setting the consumer key to be DeepCode. We're setting the consumer name to be DeepCode. And here we have the public key, and this is the public key that we just had. So let's copy this one to make sure we have it. Copy, and we are pasting it in here, paste. And with this, we are done, and we can make a save. So this is the configuration that needed to be done, and we are done with set up the application link. As a next step, we need to create a group and an account, a user account for DeepCode. The group I generate to kind of simulate a bit your own environment, probably, because I guess you will use groups, and we would also probably like to have DeepCode not running on an administrative user, but more on a kind of standard user, so you have a better control over the rights. My suggestion is first we start off with a group. So for this, we are in this administration dashboard here for BitBucket, and up on the top left we have accounts groups. So we go in here and we can create a group by clicking on the top right here, create group. We give the group a name, let's call it developer. We create the group, and there's the group. Let's simply add the root user to it to make things simple. We add this, and so the group has now one user to it. So next, we want to have a user account for DeepCode, and we need to have the password capable to be handed on to DeepCode to use it as a parameter. For this, the password should not have any kind of very special characters like the equal sign or something like this. What I do normally in this regard is I use a tool from Linux called pvgen, and simply paste it in here. And as you can see, it generates nice passwords. And it also, with this configuration, leaves out any kind of these special characters that might harm us later. So let's use this password here. I kind of save it in here again, because we will use it later on. We will need it later on. So there we know where it is. Okay. So here we have this this password. So we go back to the administration. We go on the top left again. There is the users. And here you can say top right again, create user. So the username, we call it DeepCode, full name, DeepCode, email address, DeepCode@local.local. And the password we just generated. So we paste in the generated password here and say create user. So now our user is created, what we want to do is now we want to add this user to a group, the group developers, so that we have access to everything that the developer group has access to. Good. Now let's upload something to play with later on. So for this, I would like to generate a project, a repository, and upload some code in that repository. So to do so, top left, you find projects. We click on it and you see there are no projects yet, obviously. So we go here to create a project. And I call it testing. And the project key is TES. No description, no project avatar for now, just create the project. Okay, so within the project, what we do now is we change the project settings. So we go to this gear here, and here we have the security and the project permission. And inside of the project permission, you see root has full access. But what we do is we go to group access and we add the developer group to have read access on this project. Add this. This is all we need. And as you know, in the developer group, there's a DeepCode user, and with this DeepCode should have access to everything that we need later on. And read access is enough. Okay. So next, what we need is we need to have a repository in this project. So we're going in here, we're saying create repository. This is this plus sign, and we're just calling it again testing, just to make things easy. No description needed. And we create the repository. So, and as you can see, BitBucket nicely summarizes the Git commands that we actually need to do to set up our little project. Good. So what I did on my Windows machine is I generated a directory called testing, as you can see, and it has one file in there. There's a Java file in there with a bug. So what I will do now is I will simply do as I'm asked and execute these commands in this environment here, making sure that we have the root user in here, and I have code that I want to push, so I do the git init. Come on, git init in here. I do the git add all, so that all of the files are now part of that repository. I do the initial commit, and I set the origin on my locally hosted BitBucket server, as you can see. So doing this, and now we should be able to push it up. It asks for the password and the user. So we're doing this, and as you can see, it's uploaded now onto the server. So second to last step, installing the DeepCode Docker container. I'm back on my Linux server here, and as you can see in my current directory, I also have the tarball of DeepCode. What I now need to do is I need to load this tarball into my local Docker instance. So I have docker load -i, and using the tarball that is provided from DeepCode. So I'm doing this, loading it in. It doesn't take too long for now. It's just a few seconds to open the tarball and get the necessary files copied and stuff. While this is taking on, I will explain what is the next step that we are about to do. In my script, you can see we have the docker run command. We are doing --rm, which means whenever we stop it, the containers are actually removed. We do a -it, which is interactive, so we keep the shell open and we see the log messages coming back. And we're using two volumes that I will need to create later on, one of them. So the DeepCode working dir is one of the volumes that I will need to create. And there's a sock volume that also needs to be mapped, as you can see here. Then we're using the environmental file. This is the bb-env that we just did. And you see I'm just giving the full path to it. Another environmental variable is the BitBucket Server OAuth path. And you can see we're using the PEM. So we use the pub file to configure the BitBucket server, and now we're using the PEM file to configure DeepCode. And last but not least, we have the front port. So this is the 7 that we are using IP address wise, and the 80 as a port. And last but not least, we are giving a name DeepCode, and we're using DeepCode, the container definition. Okay, so next command, we need to set up the volume. It's the same command that you already did for the BitBucket side. So this we can simply paste in here and let it run. Now we have a DeepCode work dir volume. So, and now we can start the DeepCode run, the Docker run command to start DeepCode. This takes a second because there are several Docker containers being started up. Some of them have to be downloaded from the internet and stuff. So this takes roughly like 4 to 5 minutes on my machine. I don't want to make you wait, so we will cut here and we will come back as soon as this is done. Yeah, welcome back. It roughly took like maybe 3 minutes or so. This is where it's ending now, or where the stable state is. And if we scroll up a bit, you can see, there was a lot of downloading activity. And in the end, there were these containers started: app Redis, app suggestion, app db1, the bundle, the API, and the website. So this is literally the collection of containers that DeepCode contains of or consists of. And as you also can see, all of them have been assigned to a private network. So there is a private network where they communicate amongst each other, and there's only one port, the port 80, actually of the website, that is published to the wider world, and that is then used to communicate back and forth between DeepCode and the external BitBucket server in our case. Coming back to my little script, what you can see, this is what the container or the Docker PS command would look like if you would run it. You see the different containers they are there, and how this looks like. You can do a network ls to see, so to say, the private network where all of these containers communicate to each other. For us now, the interesting part is we are navigating to this website, to the 7, which is actually the DeepCode website. So we're going back to the browser, and we're starting a browser window here, and we're running DeepCode, and it redirects us to BitBucket, and it says, welcome to BitBucket. Do you allow DeepCode to have access? And yes, we are allowing it. And now you see DeepCode is accessing it, is analyzing the files, and there we have one critical report in our testing repository. So if we go to audit, we can see DeepCode pulls the files, analyzes them, and gives us the critical warning back, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve. So with this, we have a local Docker host. We run DeepCode as a Docker container or containers. On that host, we have BitBucket installed as a Docker container right next to it, and we configured both to work with each other. So this should be the perfect play environment, the perfect little environment to check out how DeepCode is working. And also you can see a lot of things that you can sort of say steal, quote unquote, if you want to install it in your own private environment. Thanks for watching, but now it's your turn. Go to DeepCode.ai, set up an account and see what DeepCode can do for your code.